Pelicans 111 to 104. Starting us off, CJ McCollum had 24 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. Zion Williamson had 23 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Brandon Ingram had 19 points, 6 assists, and 7 rebounds. Herb Jones, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. Jonas Valanciunas had 12 points and 12 rebounds. And some contributors off the bench, Matt Ryan, 9 points, 3 of 6 from 3. Jordan Hawkins had 3 points, and Dyson Daniels had 6. So, Pat, just to start us off, what did you like and dislike about this first game from the Pelicans?
Well, Tony, appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to go ahead and get together here on a pretty routine basis. Um, like you said, happy to see that the season has started off. Always interesting going and playing a divisional rival like Memphis. Although they are a little bit undermanned at the moment, having to deal with some off the court issues as well as some injuries. So knew it was going to be a tough task going in there. Hostile environment, basketball city, small market. You knew the place would be amped up and ready to go. Um, Certainly was happy to see that despite not coming out um, clicking on all cylinders, the guys hung in there and kept the game close until we could go ahead and kind of break it open. Later in that second quarter with some timely shooting off the bench.
I totally agree with you, Pat. Like you said, it's always a tough environment in Memphis, especially for the Pelicans. In the last couple years, it always seemed like when the Pelicans went down there, we either started off slow, and once Memphis started hitting their shots, we kind of would usually crumble at that point, let the crowd get into us, and kind of let go of the rope. But I feel like tonight, especially CJ McCollum came up with some timely made shots tonight as they were trying to come back in that second half. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the best point there, right? You phrased it well, timely. I think that's the best version of CJ, right? Whenever he's able to kind of play within the flow, he's not having to carry the burden of the entire offense. He's able to kind of shift that over to both Brandon and Zion, and he's able to kind of pick his spots, play off ball, allow those guys to kind of take that attention from the defense and really find his rhythm. I think that's the best version of CJ. Um, I would say, all in all, like you were kind of mentioning, he did play the most complete game out of the three guys. Right, Brandon had a strong first quarter and first half, and as well as Zion kind of picking it up late. But CJ was kind of that even keeled guy that, like you said, hit some timely shots and kind of kept the momentum going when they needed it. So was happy to see CJ kind of embrace that role and kind of fall into that spot and kind of let the game come to him playing off those guys.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It kind of just seemed like CJ had a little more lift on that shot coming into tonight's game, and has looked pretty well throughout the preseason with that shot. I know he battled a lot of injuries last year, and I kind of touched up on this in my first podcast. But CJ kind of really being the spokesperson of the team, being that leader, being the one who comes out and you know kind of was that even keeled all throughout the game. I do think Brandon and Zion both had their moments, like you were saying, but CJ was probably the most consistent throughout the game. Brandon kind of had it going in the beginning of the game, and then CJ kind of had his little run. And then Zion, I think, scored the last 10 or 11 points for us. So you kind of see when they can kind of pick their spots, they're going to be pretty difficult and hard to defend.
Yeah, that's for sure. Um, like you said, each guy kind of had their moment, and I think especially here early with them not having one a ton of experience playing together, based off the injury woes the last couple of years, and two kind of coming into a new system. I think it was nice to kind of see and for those guys to be, able to kind of work through that and see that, despite maybe having slow starts for some guys or cooling off late from the instance of BI, right? That they're all able to kind of get their looks and get the shots that they're accustomed to getting within the flow of the offense. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise to kind of see those guys work through those situations through the game. I think that'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah, agreed. And another guy, he is the person for us defensively, Herb Jones, but that's always going to be his bread and butter. There is picking up the best guy on the opposing team night in and night out. But I really liked Herb's confidence offensively, kind of just letting the shots go just right when it touched the hands, and I really see a more confident Herb Jones on the offensive end. If that's driving, catch and shooting, like I said, it just seems like there was no more hesitancy from him. What do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. I would say you could definitely tell he's got more confidence in that jump shot. It doesn't look like he's in the mindset of, oh, I have to shoot this. It's more of the mindset, oh, I get to shoot this, right? He's excited to catching that ball, and putting it up. He's put the work in, so he's eager to kind of um, get the rewards from that. I do always like Herb, despite being a catch and shoot guy, especially from the corner. Right, that's where he's going to get a lot of shots playing from those guys. I always like seeing him play as a cutter, and most importantly, which they kind of tinkered with last year. I love seeing him as a screener. Right, until we're 30, 40, 50 games in to him shooting at a higher clip. Right, there's still always going to be something that has to be given up on a nightly basis from opposing defenses, and I think that's where you're still gonna see that on a nightly basis, right? Teams are gonna make Herb knock down not only at efficient clip, but at a high volume, right? So to kind of offset that, they need to make sure they're using him as a screener to ensure that those defenders can't really, sag off him and start working over to one of those other guys. But certainly a step in the right direction, and I think all things said, pretty much a perfect opening night for Herb.
Yeah, agreed. And just to kind of stay with Herb, kind of more on the defensive end, or just kind of doing those tangible things that we see from him night in and night out. But I do think last year he kind of did lack, and with a couple of players on the team, kind of that knack to go and try to get some rebounds or go get the ball. And you see tonight he ended up with 8 rebounds, 5 defensive and 3 offensive. I think that's really going to be huge. Um, with this team this year is just having more guys collectively in that paint trying to end possessions with rebounds. I mean, you saw Brandon; he had 7, Zion had 7, Jonas had 12, Herb with 8, and Larry just in some spot minutes since this was his first action of the season with 8. So that's what he's going to do. But can you speak on that rebounding side from Herb?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good call out, right? I mean, I don't think this is going to be a team that has somebody that averages 13, 14 rebounds, and another guy sitting there at 8, 9 rebounds. This is going to be a team that has to rebound as a committee, especially if they want to go ahead and play a little bit smaller at times and have some versatile, switchable pieces out there. They're going to have some smaller guys there at the 4 and 5 position that are going to have to, like you said, once that ball goes up, guys are going to have to chase out guys, get bodies on them, and essentially go and rebound that ball outside of their space. So, um, again, another really good takeaway, and was happy to see those guys, be able to be rewarded by going after that ball. It's always certainly a great feeling seeing a guy like Brandon, Zion, Herb. That guys are typically, sub 5 in rebounds, up there around 7 or 8 rebounds. That certainly is a great first start.
Yeah, definitely. And I just kind of want to hit on Val's a little bit. I don't know how big plus minus guy you are, but he was a plus 16, which was, the best out of the starters um, by a large amount. But he played 29 minutes tonight, 12 points, 12 rebounds. I thought shot it with confidence, wasn't so much hesitancy on the three, just because I think he knows those are kind of the looks that he's going to be getting this year. And then when he does have that position on the block, we need to get him that ball and get a couple easy ones there for him that way. So, what did you see kind of from him? Do you like the minutes where they're at? Would like to see something different from him?
Yeah. I think with it being game one, obviously this is gonna take some time to really shake itself out and um we know what we're going to get from Vowles from an offensive perspective, right? It's always, a cherry on top when he's able to step out behind the perimeter and knock down a three or two to really space out the floor even a little bit more. But, he knows he's an ancillary offensive piece who's going to be, slotted in that fourth option. So it was nice to see that, they were able to get him some touches, depending on the group that was on the floor. I think the big thing about, um, Jonas on a nightly basis is him on that defensive end. Um, tonight probably wasn't the best, um, game to go ahead and see what that looks like from a defending in space, defending off the pick and roll as they were missing some key guys in the backcourt, especially someone as athletic and gifted as Ja. That obviously is going to put a lot of pressure on anybody in the league, but especially someone that plays with foul style. So I think that's something that has to be monitored. On a nightly basis as we progress, and I think that's going to be really the driving force, determining his minutes and the amount of different groups that we see him playing with is that ability to kind of um, manage that space in the middle of the floor, guarding pick and roll. So, but all in all, good night. Happy to see him go ahead and get his trademark double double, keep him engaged, and moving forward into the next game.
Definitely. I just want to kind of move on to the rotation, kind of get your thoughts on everything with that. The Pels go 10 deep tonight with Larry Nance, Matt Ryan, Kyra Lewis Jr., Jordan Hawkins, and Dyson Daniels all coming off the bench. Kind of speak on a couple of those guys who you kind of liked, kind of what you saw from them, and if you liked any of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, with the guys that were available, right? Pell's dealing with some injuries there in the bench rotation. Have no issue with the guys that got minutes. I still think they're working through maybe finding some combinations that are, better than others. Certainly, we got to see a lot with both Matt Ryan and Jordan Hawkins out there at one time. Obviously, Matt Ryan here, a late add to the roster, but we know what he brings to the table, and it obviously makes a big difference having two guys that are capable of knocking down shots from the perimeter. You could tell within just a couple of minutes of those guys being out there and knocking down a shot or two that CJ and Zion were having some more space to operate out there. I do think that there were some rotations and groups that were playing together, especially when Brandon was kind of manning that bench rotation, um, where he really didn't have much shooting around him, which made his job even more difficult. But obviously, that's getting very granular and picky, right? We'll be able to find ways to sprinkle in shooters, especially as we work guys back in from injury. But really, really happy to see that. In his first NBA game, Hawkins really, able to kind of step in there. I think his first shot was at the end of the shot clock, rather deep and contested three, and he was able to step up and knock that shot down. So that showed me a lot. Him being willing to take that shot and not shy away from the moment. But yeah, happy to see what those two guys can bring on a nightly basis in terms of shooting. Um, and then the other guy is Dyson. I think Dyson had a really good night. I think they did a really good job of putting him in positions to succeed. Right? They didn't solely put the ball in his hand at the top of the key and have him kind of run the offense and play make. They allowed him to kind of play as a cutter, play in space, operate off those other guys, and most importantly, kind of do what he does. Right? He's a do it all guy. He's going to get blocks. He's going to contest shots around the rim. He's going to chase down those long rebounds like you were calling out, um, and defend obviously on the other end. So I think they did a good job of utilizing his minutes. I would expect him to get a pretty heavy dose as we're dealing with some of these injuries, but um, really good first night for Dyson, and just hope to see him kind of continue to grow that confidence on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah, just going off with something you addressed kind of at the beginning of what you were saying there is Bi kind of manning that second unit. I want to kind of talk about the lineup that we saw when Zion was kind of at the five, and then we had Bi Herb, Dyson, and Kyra. What were your thoughts on that lineup? And do you think that there was any advantages, disadvantages to that, and kind of how you saw that play out for the couple minute stretches that we got in the first and second half with that?
Yeah, right. I knew, everybody knew this was a possibility, right? Coming into the year, there was some talk of Zion playing the five. Nobody really knew what that looked like, and what amount of time was going to be spent having him at the five. I think this is also something that is going to be a work in progress until we can see him playing with some of those other guys from the bench unit. Um, a game like tonight where he's playing with, I think you mentioned Dyson and Kyra and some guys like that. Um, I personally don't see it as a huge advantage of playing him at the five, especially with these group of guys, because one that really kind of slots him down on that lower block area and kind of almost feels like you have to force feed him on the low post where I don't really think that's his most effective place with his back to the basket and him having to kind of work in that confined space with some bigger bodies around him. I always think he's going to be a guy that's a little bit better from free throw line extended that can get a little bit ahead of steam and shift one direction or not and get up in the air and kind of contort his body and find ways to finish around guys, right? Rather than solely finishing over guys. But I think there are some potential, teams where on a nightly basis that could certainly be a good lineup to roll through for 3, 4, 5 minute stretches, especially when you have a guy like Trey returning back from injury, another guy who's long and rangy and athletic and can also stretch the floor. So certainly don't think this is the most optimized group for him to be playing that spot, but I certainly think it's something to keep in your back pocket that you can go to. In instances that you want to speed up the pace or things of that sort, but certainly don't think at this time it should be a super big and heavy portion of the rotation.
Definitely. Just moving on to kind of the next thing. I know we've kind of touched on some players just here and there, but what did you kind of like from the offense tonight, just as a whole? Did you see anything out there that kind of looks good, or some other things that might be watching going into these next couple games and the first couple weeks of the season?
Yeah, I was impressed with what I saw. I saw them able to kind of play two different styles, right? And I think a lot of that is predicated off of how the game was going and how things kind of transpired, right? They started off a game where they were getting a lot of mid-range shots. Brandon had it going earlier. He was getting a lot of good looks. He was also looking to get others involved, but they were putting a lot of pressure on the rim. I think there was some, plan to attack the rim, like you had mentioned on your previous show, to potentially get the Grizzlies in foul trouble with them having some, limitations in the front court and Jaren having a history of dealing with foul trouble. So I think that was certainly something they started with. Um, Certainly wanted to put pressure on that rim, like I said, but you saw them shift, right? When that second group kind of came in that second quarter, they saw a couple shots get going. Then you kind of saw a lot of guys kind of floating off to the 3 point line or guys driving it and looking to kick for that 3 point shot. So certainly saw the ability to kind of play numerous styles. But the thing I was most impressed with is, I've been harping for years. It feels like at this point, right, that you truly have got to lean into, building that offense around your two or three main focal points and letting the rest of it kind of stem out from there. It seemed like especially in that first half, right? They did a really good job of, finding guys in spots that they really like the ball. And there was a while that where Zion and Brandon, were taking turns sprinting down the floor and catching it kind of on that free throw line extended or kind of mid post area and allowing them to kind of go to work and draw two and find shooters and that kind of allowed CJ to kind of get into a good rhythm, getting some open looks and him having kick outs sent over to him where he was able to ball fake and have a guy running at him and put the ball on the deck and get a nice mid range look, but. Certainly really like seeing them kind of play towards a couple of these guys' strengths rather than just kind of, running pick and roll over and over and over again and guys, just standing around. So that's something I'm hoping they continue to build off of, getting each of these guys, 15, 20 looks a night in those given spots and then just kind of allowing the game to kind of grow from there. So Was happy to see that.
Yeah, agreed. And it's kind of like James Borrego said, coming out of the break, we really had a strong second quarter, outscoring them 32-19. And I think you really saw that offense really come alive with us making a couple shots because I know we didn't shoot many threes in the first quarter, but then in the second quarter, we end up making six. And I think he kind of, you know, hit the nail on the coffin a little bit in that interview saying, hey, these guys have just got to trust each other. And, once we start building that rapport with each other and trusting each other, they kind of see that, it's not just this person, that person kind of taking turns. It's kind of the give it up to give it back. And if somebody's got that, lane to go into, that person can do that. Say if it's a Herb or a CJ or whatnot. But I think it all comes in with trust. And, the more that they play with each other and kind of build up these games. And with the new offense, it's kind of Borrego's vision of kind of letting them all know that there's certain spots and points that everybody can kind of attack from this offense.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was nicely said by him at the half. He had a good pulse on kind of where the team was at offensively. Obviously, he knows that um, you know, implementing a new offense like that isn't going to happen overnight, and it's going to take these guys not just seeing it in practice or training camp or whatever that may be. That they need to see it in real time, playing against real opponents, and seeing those guys, and seeing, where do I get shots in this offense? Is this something that I'm comfortable with? Am I taking shots that I feel like best suit my game? And I think you saw that early with Brandon, right? He was playing within the flow of the offense, but they were isolating him in space, and allowing him to easily navigate from one spot of the floor to the next, that he's very comfortable getting shots, as well as CJ throughout the game. So certainly something that I think the team just needs to continue, just working on, and gaining trust in the system, and making sure that inevitably, when those bad runs do occur, or you're having an off night shooting, and you don't have CJ making six threes and Matt Ryan making three threes, and Hawkins contributing. When you don't have those shots, are you gonna completely turn away from this system, and just try to play hero ball, and everybody's just trying to get up shots? Or is that the time where you really turn towards that offense to try to, generate good looks for the team, and kind of be that engine of the offense looking forward?
Yeah, and another kind of point with that, like you were saying, is Bi kind of got it going early and kind of started us off. But then you saw him being the unselfish player like he is. You kind of saw the Grizzlies kind of change their game plan on pick and rolls. They were sending the double, and he was willing to give that ball up to a CJ or a Zion or any of those other guys. So can you talk to kind of like what you saw from that point of view once the Grizzlies kind of made some adjustments towards certain players started to get it going?
Yeah, right. That the first half was obviously kind of a feeling out process for both teams, right? Not only is New Orleans dealing with some new things they're implementing in terms of the offense. Memphis is having to learn how to play without somebody as ball heavy, and as involved as Jaw. So they were working through some of that. So that first half was really just a feeling out process, which could be expected. So I was happy to see, for that reason, that the Pels kind of hung in there and just kind of played the waiting game until they started landing some punches. But in the second half, you really started seeing the two coaches kind of really starting to, change game plans, make tweaks here and there, making adjustments in terms of rotations and coverages. And one of those coverages that you called out was, blitzing that ball screen with Brandon at the top of the key, which kind of had a lot to do with, kind of taking him out of a rhythm. Which is obviously kind of what they were trying to do. But I think, instead of just only taking him out of a rhythm, they were hoping that that was going to take the rhythm out of the Pelicans offense entirely, right? With him kind of getting stagnant or making a poor decision here or there. But for the most part, I think he did a really good job of not hitting that home run out of there, but hitting a single, right? He'd hit the right swing. They would allow it to swing to the next guy, and then they'd play out of rotation there, which got them a lot of good luck. So I think the big thing with this team offensively, especially as teams start to make adjustments to them is just play simple, right? But make the easy play. You don't have to make the home run pass or the skip pass across for three. Just make the right play. And I think bringing Matt Ryan back into this conversation, I think that's something that a lot of people probably really appreciated when watching him come in. I'm sure a lot of people, especially Pels fans, right, from previous games and catching clips here and there. Everybody knows he's a good shooter. That's why he's in the league. That's what his skill set is. But he displayed a lot of poise and a lot of high basketball IQ while out there. It seemed like every time he got the ball and a defender was running at him, he was making the right play. He was making the right swing pass to a guy that got another guy a look or a drive to the rim to get to the free throw line. I think that's something that everybody on the team could take away, and especially CJ, Zion, Brandon, guys that are uber talented and have all of this ability to get anywhere they want to on the floor because of either their size, athleticism, or handle. They don't always have to do that, right? They can make the easy play, which ends up, netting the team a good look. And throughout a game, when you're getting 80, 90 possessions, 80, 90 shots up, doing that a couple times a night is going to win you a lot of ball games. And I think that was something that was nice to see.
Yeah. We're saying a lot about the offense and how it looked good, and there was certain points where certain guys did certain things. Um, but did you kind of like that shot selection tonight? I mean, we were 14 of 32 from three, which is a 43.8%. Obviously, that's a great shooting percentage as a team. Would you like to see that number go up attempt wise? And twofold with that, another thing that necessarily didn't hurt us tonight, but we did have 21 turnovers. That's kind of the thing with the team when we're going. We're usually keeping that turnover amount down and the assists high, which we had 22 assists and 21 turnovers. Usually that's a recipe for a bad night, but we were able to, overcome that. So, how do you kind of speak on those two things?
Yeah, first we can go ahead and start with turnovers. Yeah, like you said, 21, not a good number. Pretty sure I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'd imagine their assist number was there pretty close to that, right? So they were really at a 1-for-1 ratio pretty much, which is never ideal. But I would say that typically the one area that I really struggle with in terms of them turning the ball over and things that frustrate me are the simple things, right, that they've done in the past. They struggle to make entry passes, inbounds passes, just small things that are due to lack of focus and things like that. Thankfully, I didn't see a whole lot. There was maybe five or six the entire game that were those kind of turnovers. For the most part, those turnovers came from either pushing it in transition. There were a couple times we looked to get Zion the ball, late in the break, or guys trying to really put pressure on the rim. Playing in the paint around bodies. We got a couple turnovers there. So yes, 21 turnovers is not ideal. It is great that we went ahead and still found a way to win despite that. But I think there also needs to be some content around what were those turnovers, right? How were those accumulated, and how are we playing? So, although 21 is bad, I certainly don't think it was the worst night of turning the ball over that we've seen. In terms of
Yeah,
the
and I was just going to say, and going with that, there was a lot of, dead ball turnovers, really, too, where, BI had a couple push offs and offensive fouls where, that's why his turnover number might be a little high tonight. And then Dyson Daniels as well. He had a few offensive fouls here and there. So,
yeah.
like you said, it's bad, but it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah, for sure. Good call out there on the offensive fouls. And of course, if you had to pick a turnover, right, that's the one you want so you can get back and set your defense and go ahead and avoid playing in transition. Um, in terms of the 3-point shooting, I think it's still really early to kind of see where this team's going to fall. I think a lot of things change when you have guys that on a given night can shoot 6, 8, 10 threes a night when you're looking at someone like Trey and Jose has a tendency of when he's playing well, he'll shoot 4 or 5 a night. I think that number looks a lot different. I don't think there's a set number of threes that I'm going to judge this team off of. I think a lot of it has to do with um, how the team is playing, how the defense is guarding them. But I think the big thing is um, the quality of those looks, right? I don't want to see a lot of threes coming off the dribble, right? Um, I want to see those threes that guys are playing off of Zion and Brandon, and that includes CJ. I think the reason CJ shot it so well, a lot of his threes tonight were off of either a skip from a double team when they were doubling BI, or playing off Zion and in that defensive rotation, and he was able to really set his feet and be set rather than having to move and being chased by a defender, which we saw a lot last year. So I think it's mostly about what do those 3 point attempts look like, and our guys kind of playing off those two and getting open looks. So it's definitely more efficiency versus volume with this specific group.
Definitely couldn't agree more on that one. Just real quick, what did you think of the defense? Did you like kind of seeing them, play that man to man, but then there were certain times where they kind of crept back and did some token pressure uh, up front, and then they kind of fell back into his zone.
Yeah, I think it was certainly a good way to at least change it up, and especially with Memphis dealing with some newer guys there in the backcourt, right? It might have stole a possession here or there, or took them down to a late shot clock. Just them having to communicate and kind of work through that. So um, not a whole lot of things right now. It's still super early in terms of defense. I was really more in just wanting to see them playing hard, looking like they were at least attempting to make the right rotation and cover for one another. There were a lot of times where we were able to run guys off the line and kind of chase guys around and make those rotations. So I was happy with the effort. Um, so yeah, I think the defense is always going to be Willie's calling card and thing that he kind of leans on, especially when shots aren't falling. So I think certainly a step in the right direction, and was happy to see Willie really try to make some of those on the fly changes, either coming out of timeout or coming off a made bucket, like you said, kind of changing it up and just maybe stealing possession here or there, which um, you know through a 48-minute game, that makes a big difference when you're stealing a possession here or there.
Yeah, and kind of to go back with Borrego's point at halftime, he was kind of saying, what's gonna make this engine go is kind of that defense and getting those stops, which is getting us into that offense and getting a couple easier looks here and there. And like you said, over the course of a game, getting one or two of those a quarter and getting up the floor and getting an easy bucket for a Zion or a Brandon or whoever it may be, that's going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that playing in transition, right? That's really going to help. You saw it tonight, right? You saw Zion kind of get jump started a couple times by getting buckets in transitions. The one everyone will call out is the lob from Brandon from near half, right? That starts from a defensive possession, getting a stop, getting a turnover, and getting him out and running. I think you're going to find as he's kind of working back into knocking all the rust off and getting himself in a place where he's as crisp as he can be, right? There's going to be nights that he maybe doesn't have the typical touch we've come to expect from him around the rim, and getting him 6 to 8 points a night from getting him out and running and putting pressure on other teams, I think will go a long way. And not only his confidence and keeping him engaged on the defensive end, but helping the team kind of see that, like you said, if we play aggressive and we're in the right spots and we take timely gambles and chances and try to first turnovers, we have somebody like Zion that can really make the other team pay on the other end. So um, I think all things considered, it looked pretty good.
Yeah, and just before we get off here, I just kind of want to talk about our two main guys, Bi and Zion. And so first, I'll just start with Bi and ask you kind of what do you think of his pace of play today, his shot selection, and kind of what you liked and you saw from him from a scoring standpoint, from a distribution standpoint, and defensively with like rebounds and everything. What'd you kind of see there from him?
Yeah, I think Bi played a solid game tonight. I don't think it was his best, right? Or I think you could see he was kind of working into a flow. The one thing I was happy to see was if we're gonna have a game that is, one half oriented, right? That he doesn't play great the entire night, but I'd rather him be really engaged and be playing well early, right? Not only does it give himself confidence, it gives the rest of the team confidence. When he's aggressive early, it seems to kind of jumpstart the team. As that shot was, starting to waver there in the second half, and Memphis was doing some things to kind of get him out of the rhythm that he was in, rightfully so. I think he did a really good job of really kind of getting that ball out of his hands. There were only a couple possessions where I felt like, he held on to it a little longer than he needed to, or kind of forced the issue. So I think all in all, I think he did a really good job playmaking. You can sense that he's looking for Zion on the offensive end, whether it's feeds to the low post or the one or two lobs that we got. I think he's made a conscious effort that he needs to feed Zion. He needs to get Zion easy buckets, and then that thing comes full circle. There were a couple times that Zion was on the wing and was getting Brandon touches against a smaller defender on the low block and was able to give him a good look, whether it went in or not. Those are good shots. Um, in terms of the other side of the floor, I thought Brandon did a good job of being active defensively. There were a couple times where not sure if he would have been registered with the block or deflection, but he made some good contests to shooters late and got in their way and caused some pretty bad misses from the Memphis guys, which resulted in either some easy rebounds or helped us get out in transition. So was happy to see him one being engaged and active defensively, as well as really crashing the glass and doing what he could do to get in there and, like you said, grab 7 boards.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of said it, going into the season that he's going to have a lot of responsibility, and if this team wants to go where they've been talking about for the last couple of years, it starts with him and him committing himself to that defensive end. I think he's really made an improvement in that area, and at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is rebounds with him, because when he usually rebounds the ball, it's a successful thing for the Pelicans, and they usually come out, more wins than losses when he's actively trying to get those rebounds and ending those possessions defensively. So that was really good to see.
Yeah, for sure.
And then just kind of what did you see from Zion? Kind of started a little slow and then kind of ramped it up towards the end of that first half, and then he ended the game with our final 12 points.
Yeah, it was first of all great to see him back out there. Right, happy to see him healthy. I think you could see a little bit of that early on. One, like we were saying, knocking off a little bit of that rust. He's a guy that's predicated on his explosiveness and his touch and feel and his ability to kind of contort his body and get the right angle around the rim, and that's his game. So I think you could see that one. There was a little bit of rust there that he was working through, but two, I think he had to kind of, he had to take a couple falls. He had to take some contact. He needed to get knocked down and really see, hey, okay, I'm okay. Like that, I'm good. I'm recovered. I can go back to playing the way that I want to play. I think for the most part he was engaged. I didn't really see him check out or take any plays off like we saw in the preseason game. And I think as the game kind of progressed and he was able to kind of get some of those if you want to call them trademark Zion plays, right? The drive to the rim and the tough finishes, the getting out in transition and finishing a lob. You could kind of see that he was kind of getting comfortable with not only his body, but his skill set, which ultimately you saw late in the game. He was able to kind of go to that isolation on the elbow against Tillman, and he was able to kind of use a nice little handle and get himself some space and shoot a nice little 15, 17 foot, fadeaway jumper, which is certainly really nice to see him. And hopefully it's something he kind of adds to the bag on a regular basis, because I think that kind of unlocks not only a new level of offense for him, but I think that also opens up the rest of the game for the rest of the team.
Definitely, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts on Willie Green tonight. just looking at it, kind of looking at the minutes, looks like Zion had 32, Bi 36, Herb 38, Jonas 29, and 37 for CJ. Um, I kind of like to see that. That's always been kind of my one thing to at least start the year. Um, if I had to say anything about Willie Green, is he usually keeps the minutes pretty low. So I don't know if it was a factor of just having some of our guys out, or this is kind of just a new thing where we're going to be playing our starters a little more heavier minutes to begin a season because usually any of those guys would be around 30 minutes to 34 at least to start the year, but it was a good sign from my point of view to kind of see those higher minutes for all those guys.
Yeah, I would think it's a little bit of both, right? I think obviously if you have a guy like Jose and Trey and guys like that, especially Najee, kind of playing that wing position, right? You probably would see a little bit of a dial back, but I also think that there might be a little bit of a changing of the guard, right? We've got the new medical staff in there, things that we've heard. They're kind of taking a new approach of, we're going out there and we're going to play, right? This is who we are. These are our guys. It kind of feels like, and I know it's early, but it kind of feels like they've kind of taken the bubble wrap off a little bit, and they're trusting these guys and trusting the work and the money and the resources that they put into their bodies this offseason, especially a guy like CJ, right, coming off of surgery last year as he was dealing with those issues. And I know he missed the playoffs last year for the first time in his career. And, it's been a large story of this is the longest offseason. Well, he used that offseason to not only get healthy, but everyone's raving about the condition that he's in. And you could see that throughout this game. So I think it's twofold. I think it is the rotation in terms of dealing with some injuries, but I think that it's an early season. These are young guys. I think they understand the importance of getting off to a good start this year and certainly taking games that they should be taking. Right. This is a game that the Pelicans should have won. Although it was in Memphis, it is a divisional opponent. It's a tough place to win. This is a game that you look at down John Morant. You've got your three main guys healthy. This is a must-win game, right? So I think you could potentially see those minutes shift a little bit here in the next couple of games, but I think it's a definitely like you said, it's a trend in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's always good to get that first one. In any season, especially going on the road, like we've said countless times in this episode. Very hard, tough place to play, but if the Pelicans want to do the things that they've been talking about, the talking's kind of over. We're here. The season is now. It all kind of shows up on the court, and it's always good to start if you're going to be a great team is winning on the road because great teams are going to win at home. So you need to kind of pile those wins on the road, and I think it's definitely a good start, especially since the Pels' first 15 games, 10 of those games will be at home. So it's always good to get that first one on the road. Uh, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first one's always, especially when you're implementing a new system, I think it just gives those guys confidence and gives them a little bit more, reassurance to kind of trust the system, trust, JB, Coach Willie, and kind of just really lean into the direction that the, organization and coaching staff has kind of taken them in. So certainly a great first step, grabbing the first one. Um, Kept everybody healthy. Now we looked ahead to getting back home, and like you said, really taking advantage of having the first 10 of 15 games back at the blender.
Definitely, it should be uh, good game Saturday night against the Knicks coming into town. Those fans are going to be filling that place up and really excited about this team, especially coming home with that win. So hopefully we can rattle a few off here to start the year and kind of get that forward momentum. But do you have anything else before we kind of sign off here?
Big thing would be go, like you said, go ahead and take care of home court. Top teams in this league, they win a high percentage of their home games. They split those road games and they take care of the teams that they're supposed to beat. So Step one, we took care of the team that we were supposed to beat in a team with Memphis tonight. The next step on a growing and maturing team trying to go to places they haven't been before is take care of home court. So I'm gonna have a probably a pissed off New York Knicks team coming in there after tonight, but certainly going to be a really big test for our guys, and hopefully they're locked in and ready for it.
Definitely. That's kind of all I got. So I'm just going to sign off here, and I appreciate you coming on to the first recap: the Pels versus the Grizzlies. Your Pelicans 111, Grizzlies 104, and I really appreciate you coming on. And let's do this again Saturday. Let's go
Yes,
for win
sir.
two.
See you
All
then.
righty, that was a good time.
Yep. Go Pels.